All right, guys, on today's video, we're going to go over our Gen 2 disaster prevention kit installation on our 2023 test truck. We're going to go over some of the tips and tricks to getting it installed and any of the other little fine, minute details that we think you need to know to make your installation as easy as possible. We're going to go over what you get in the kit. So when you take the Gen 2 kit out of the box, this is kind of what you're going to see. You're going to see what we have here on the table. So I'm going to kind of just walk through everything that we have so that you can understand what's going on, and then we're also going to do the assembly of the sub-assemblies that you're going to get so that we can prep everything to go on the truck. We'll also go over the variants in the hoses for the model years, just to kind of give you an idea of the differences for each generation of the 6.7. So to start off, this is the M-prop adapter. You're going to get it like this. There will be a plug already sealed and in the front of it. There's nothing that you need to do with that. It's ready to go. We're going to put the O-rings on this. So I'll just walk through that right now. So you're going to have a larger O-ring that's going to go in the bottom. It's going to sit in there like that. The other thing too, on all the O-rings, I do recommend putting a little bit of grease on them. It'll help hold the O-ring in, and it'll also help when installing the part. So we'll walk through here. Put this one on. Kind of like that. So you have two that go on the base of it on the bottom. Like I said, we'll go ahead and lube these. Put a little bit of grease on this. You can use anything from dielectric grease to maybe like a heavier gear oil or motor oil is perfectly fine. Go ahead and just kind of put it on there. It'll help the O-ring stay in place and also be installed. So go ahead. So that's done. So you're ready to go on the M-prop adapter on the valve for the pump. You're ready to go. We give you an extra O-ring for the actual valve. So on the valve, there's a O-ring on the very tip of it that when exposed to diesel fuel for years and years, that O-ring will usually swell. And then whenever you put the adapter in and you go to put the actual valve back in the adapter, since that O-ring swelled, it makes it very difficult to get in, and it makes it very, very high potential to actually tear the O-ring. So automatically we just give you an extra O-ring for that. We recommend just taking the factory one off, replacing it with the one we give you. It'll make the installation way easier. And then these are your two install bolts for the valve and the M-prop adapter. And then we can move on over here to the actual hard line to feed the M-prop adapter. It'll go in here like so. So we'll go ahead, you get two O-rings for that. They are a 2x10 mil O-ring. So we'll go ahead and put these on. Real simple. Put a little, you're definitely going to want to lube these. So we'll put a little bit of assembly grease on that. Kind of prep it. Now that's done. That'll be ready to go on. And then we can move down the line here. We'll go to the actual quick connect lines. These are actually pretty self-explanatory. But on this kit, we're working with a 20 plus style kit. So you're going to only get a T and a single hose. So you can kind of see on this hose the way it's bent. You have a hard 90 on the bottom here and a nice sweep in it. That's actually going to go like this, to kind of show you the assembly of that and what it's going to look like to go on the truck. You'll snap that on. Now this is ready to go on the truck. You're done. That's finished. That's that. And what I'm going to cover on here actually real quick is on the hoses, we have variants of this. So as I said, this is a 20 plus style. So you only get the T and the feed hose for this hard line. This is going to go on here like this. So being that this truck has a feed line that's attached to the factory hard line, it's basically shrunk on. We don't want to have to cut that off. So we made this kit to where you disconnect that line from the fuel filter, and you're going to put this one on in front of it and snap it back on. We're going to show you that on the truck, but that's what this kit comes with. On the earlier generations, you're going to have a T that's kind of going to look like this. So you're going to have, instead of just this assembly, you're actually going to get a whole new line on the earlier model trucks. These do vary slightly because they move filter and line location a little bit on different model years. So you're going to get this line in conjunction with this assembly. You're going to get this extra line here. So this extra line is going to change in length. So this is the piece that's going to change depending on model year. So set that aside there. This is the new retaining clip. Since you're adding a third feed line to the system, we give you a nice new injection molded clip. It's ready to go. Obviously the wiring harness is pretty self-explanatory. We'll get to that when we put it on the truck. And then moving down the line here, we'll start assembling basically the return filter or the exo filter assembly. So this is what you're going to get parts wise. It's not scary, it's very simple, it's not hard to put together. We'll start on the inside here and kind of work our way out. The body of the exo filter is going to come with the contamination sensor slash pressure switch pre-installed. So you'll have the plug already in and the pressure switch already in and sealed. It's done, ready to go. The internal O-rings that seal on the actual return stem on the fuel rail, those are already in there as well. So we're going to work from the middle here. Around the inside, we'll lube this O-ring up, just real light bit of grease. Stick that down in there, kind of like so. Then the filter assembly or the screen assembly will sit on top of that O-ring, like so. And then you're going to have a retaining plate. So this retaining plate, whenever you put it on, it's only actually going to fit one way and not be odd. So like I'll show you here what it looks like correctly. So that is the proper orientation. You can see you don't want to cover that hole there. So if you put this on wrong, you're going to have an issue with that. I'll flip it upside down and actually put it on wrong so you can see what I'm talking about. You're actually going to have that overlapping that hole, and that's no good. We got fuel flowing through there. We don't want to cover that. So I'll put this on, then I'll show you one more time what it's supposed to look like once we get it bolted in. So we'll put that plate over top of the screen like that, and then you're going to have screws that we're actually going to just screw on. They're little Allen caps. They're I believe a 3mm. So what we'll do is we'll just stick those on there, screw them in real quick. These don't need to be super tight, but you also don't want them falling out. So we'll go ahead and snug those. I'm using a standard Allen wrench just because I figure that's what a lot of you guys are going to end up using. So you don't have to. You can use a socket one, but obviously it's a very small Allen cap screw, so you don't want to get too crazy on the torque on these. Just kind of snug them up. You can feel it. So that's what you want it to look like. So that's the proper orientation of the hold down plate. That's proper assembly there. So now that we got that done, we'll work to the lid here. We give you a flat O-ring. It is different on each side. There is a different groove on each side. It does not matter the orientation. It's perfectly fine. You can put it in however you want. It's going to go up inside the lip. I recommend just kind of working it in there so you get it past the threads of the cap, kind of like that. And then you can put a little bit of grease on this too. It won't hurt anything. Kind of lube that up and then thread it on. And I'll thread right on like that. Same thing. You can snug this up. You don't have to get it super tight. It's not. I can put we'll have the torque settings in the instructions. We'll go over that stuff later, but this is more for showing you guys how this needs to be and what it looks like assembled. So next step would be the -6 return fitting. There's already going to be an O-ring pre-installed on this. All you have to do is literally put it in, screw it in. Once again, You don't need to make it super tight, just snug. It's an O-ring seal. It's not a taper fitting. So you just kind of run it down till it bottoms. Snug it down. So that's the assembly. And that's what it'll look like when we go to put it on the truck, all put together. Now, we are going to have a bracket to obviously hold this down because there's no quick connects or anything in the bottom of this. All this is going to do is once you pull that factory return line off, this is going to slip right down over top of it. So this bracket, there's 2 holes here in the side of this, and this bracket is going to utilize these holes. So it'll be like that. Now, you may ask why there's 2. Different model years require different holes in different locations because they move the location of the actual return stub. And then we give you a bolt for that to bolt it onto the side of this. And then we also give you another bolt to mount it onto the valve cover on top of the factory bracket. And that's all included. So we'll put this assembly together when we go to put it on the truck and kind of show you what that looks like going onto the truck and onto the valve cover. And as I said, I'll touch on it one more time. The years do vary the way that this gets assembled for the bracket because of the location and where the actual exo filter is going to be mounted. That's why this is slotted, and that's why there's multiple holes. And it allows it to fit multiple models. So it keeps everything very streamlined for us and gives you guys the best product we can give you. And then, yeah, that pretty much covers everything. We're basically prepped to go on the truck now. Like I said, main thing is on your new O-rings, make sure they're lubed, make sure everything's on nice and there's no dirt on them, make sure everything's nice and clean. And then we'll go back to the truck and show you how all this goes together. All right, guys, first things first, we're going to want to remove the upper intake manifold, the lower intake pieces, the cold air intake, and the hot and cold side pipes just to gain access. So you guys know what that looks like on your truck already. So we're going to go ahead and just get that done and then kind of show you down to where we want to start this installation. All right, guys, now that we got the upper intake, the lower intake manifold, the cold air intake, all that's off, the first thing you're going to want to do is tape off the valve covers where the intake manifold bolted on so you don't have anything fall down in there. We prefer using tape over rags, especially on the intake, just because you don't want anything getting sucked in. You don't want to have that problem. You're going to be pulling this all apart if that happens. So tape those off, keep the debris out. The next thing we're going to talk about, and this is literally the key thing that we discuss whenever we're installing something like this. In a common rail fuel system, the tiniest piece of debris can be devastating. So you don't want hair, you don't want a tiny pebble, dust, rocks, whatever it may be. It's got to be gone out of the way and clean prior to breaking any of the system open. So the first thing we're going to go over is where the CP4 is actually located and where the M-prop valve is and where we're going to remove it. So it's down in the valley, it's flat, it's a super easy place to hold contaminant, dirt, engine grime, road grime, whatever it may be. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take something like brake clean and we're going to take a brush, whether it's a metal bristle, whether it's a toothbrush, anything works. We're going to spray that off, scrub it, scrub that whole top side of the pump, and then after we do all that, we're going to spray it again and then blow it off. Now, you can use compressed shop air, you can use a vacuum, you can use pretty much anything in that form, but you're going to want to get it clean. It has to be clean. So, as I said, we're going to start there. That's going to be the very first thing you do once you get down to the pump. We're going to want to get that clean, and we're going to show you how to do that. All right, so we have a really good example on this truck here. This is a 23 F250 HO motor. And this truck has about 2,000 miles on it. So if you look down next to this M-prop valve, you can already see a piece of road grime or debris, whatever it is, down around this M-prop valve. So what we're going to do is kind of move all the electrical connectors and stuff, unhook the valve, move all this out of the way so that you can kind of get to everything. And we're going to spray down in here and then get in there with the brush, move this around, clean it up, and then we'll spray it again. Just clean the top of the pump off best that you can. Now some trucks are obviously going to be worse than others, but overdoing this is not going to be a bad thing. Do that. Get that nice and clean. We'll come back in, spray this again. And then we're going to take air and just blow it dry. So that piece of debris should be gone. Everything should be nice and clean. You should be able to look in there and see the actual machining that was done on the pump body. The pump body is cast and then machined. So if you can see bright machining in there and there's no dirt laying on it, then you should be pretty good. All right guys, so now we're gonna pull out the M-prop valve itself. Now that everything's clean, you're good to go. It's actually a T25 Torx for the factory bolts. So we're gonna go in and just remove these. So obviously there's different types of tools. We're going to walk through the tools in the manner of, you know, what we're using on these. Obviously they make all kinds of different Torx bits and they make different wrenches and different sockets. So we're just going to tell you what we're using. You'll see kind of what we're using as we go here. So there's your factory bolt to hold the M-prop in. And then the M-prop is only O-ringed in and there's 2 bolts. So what normally, especially a truck with mileage, I'll grab the M-prop valve and kind of just move it side to side a little bit until it kind of breaks free. Once it breaks free, then start pulling up on it and it'll come out way easier. It'll pop out like that, and then there's your M-prop. All right guys, now that we have the M-prop removed, you're going to want to look in the fuel pump and you'll see the fuel laying in there. Make sure there's no debris laying in it. I prefer not cleaning the pump any further beyond this point, because you have, once again, if you're trying to spray and blow and clean, you have potential to knock more debris in the pump and you're making it even worse. So at this point, we already cleaned the pump. We know all that stuff's clean. The M-prop, pull it out. You can inspect it. Make sure there's no debris in it at this point. If it's clean and there's nothing in it, what we're going to do is we're going to take this O-ring off. This is the one that can potentially swell. So take this, we'll remove this O-ring, kind of have a look at it. We'll pop that off. This is the extra O-ring that we give you in the kit. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our new one, same exact thing. We're going to put it on here, but this one's not swollen from diesel fuel. And then you're going to want to make sure this is all nice and clean and you got nothing on it. And then we also recommend, even though there's diesel all over this, we still recommend putting a little bit of grease on this to help seat it and get it in there. So now that we have the new O-ring on it, we're going to sit this aside, and then we're going to grab the M-prop adapter, which is that black base piece, and we're going to lube that all up, sit it in here. We're actually going to be reusing the factory feed and return line hold down bolt. So the best thing is to do right now is just loosen this bolt up, which we already did. We're going to loosen this bolt up and take it out because we're going to need it out anyway. And this will also make it easier to get the M-prop adapter down into the pump. So we'll pull that up out, set it to the side. We'll take the adapter and drop it into the pump here. And we're going to want to be able to move it side to side. And then as you do that, just kind of push down. and you'll feel it just pop right in. Okay, now that it's down in, we're good to go here. We're going to take the M-prop valve that we just took out and replace the O-ring on, and we're going to put this back in as well. Push it down in there. And this should not fight you. If you replace the O-ring, it should pop right in. There shouldn't be any tension on it or anything weird going on. And once you get that down in, we give you 2 new bolts. They are M5 thread with a M4 drive. We're going to go ahead and put those in there. Once again, some of this stuff's a little tight, so you're going to have to be careful and make sure you actually get it in. So it'll drop down like that. You can use power tools to do this. I prefer, especially on this one, to not do power tools, because then it gives you kind of a feel and you kind of know more of what's going on. And then these just need snugged up. You don't need to make it super tight. And then we'll go ahead and torque them. We're going to torque them to, factory spec is 35 to 45, so usually go to 45 inch-pounds. So we'll go ahead and torque these. Okay. All right, guys, now that we got the M-prop and everything and the adapter in and torqued, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take off the line clamp here. I like to just take a flathead screwdriver and pry it open. You can basically follow the line on the way into the clamp, or on like into the clamp, and twist, and then just kind of twist the screwdriver and it'll pop. Push that off. We give you a new injection molded one to go on. We'll put that on once we get the new line in. So now that we have that done, you're going to take the hard line. You're going to take the cap off the end, blow this line out, make sure there's nothing in it, make sure it's nice and clean. Make sure you have some lubricant on the O-rings on the end. We're going to put this cap back on after we blow it out, just to keep stuff out of it. We're going to slide this line underneath all the wiring and everything that's on here. We're going to put this down into the adapter. And you're going to kind of want to leave it loose and kind of just rock it back and forth. And then that line will eventually pop down in. You'll feel it drop. The other thing you'll want to do is, after you get the line down, there's little C-clips on top of this pump. You're going to want to make sure that they're rotated. You could actually remove them, but you don't need to. Just make sure that this one here and the one over here are rotated to where they're not affecting this bracket. So when you bolt this down, they're not laying underneath of it. It'll make it sure it goes nice and straight down. And then we'll go ahead and we will put the factory bolt back in. All right, we're gonna go ahead and torque the line bolt now. We like to torque these to about 90 inch-pounds. So we'll go ahead and run that down. There we go. Okay. All right, now that we have that torqued and the line and everything is in place, you're going to be able to go ahead and put your clamp on now. So the clamp oriented with the outside, obviously the outside larger lines go on the outside and the inner is smaller. So there's really no way to mess putting the lines up or putting the lines inside of the clamp. The only thing that you're going to have to pay attention to is the barb tree on the bottom. If you are going to reuse the factory mount, you're going to have to make sure that those are obviously oriented the same way. So you're going to orient them like that. And then you can take this bracket off and obviously put it on here if you want. This truck has our lift pump fuel filter system on it. So the fuel filter got moved, so we're actually not going to utilize that on this truck. The mount is, the metal mount part. So we're just going to utilize the plastic part. So we're going to go ahead and snap this on like so, and then just flip that down. And that's it. You're done. So that nicely isolates it, separates everything, holds it exactly how it needs to be held. All right guys, now that we got the hard line installed and the clamp on, we're gonna kind of go over the fuel system feeds as far as like the line that goes down to the CP4 to feed it fuel. But before we get into that, we're gonna talk about this piece here. This is for our 17 plus kits that we sell for the fuel systems on the Luma duties. So all this does is eliminate your top fuel filter, this one. So this moves the fuel filter underneath the truck so that you don't have to deal with any mess up here. All the connections are the same as factory, so the location of the lines doesn't move. So everything stays the same. So your truck more than likely is going to have this filter still up here. If it doesn't, it'll have this. It'll all still connect exactly the same. So one of the things that we want to talk about is the actual fuel flow. So whether it's this T or whether it's the filter, your fuel comes into this system via the back line, comes out of the filter or the T via this line, and then feeds the fuel pump. So in a lot of our competitors' kits, they actually make you cut this line off. This line is shrunk fit to the hard line on the 20 plus models. So we don't want you to have to cut any of this, because anytime we give you a kit of any sort, if we can, we always try to make it to where it can be reversed. We don't want you to have to cut the truck up to the extent of not being able to put it back to factory. So looking at this line, what we're going to do is we're going to pop this clip loose. So we'll take this. Sometimes you'll have to get behind it with something or pry it open just a little bit. And they are kind of a pain depending on what year the truck is. It can be a pain to get to. And then pop that loose. And then what we're going to do is take our new line, which has this T in it. We're going to pop this back, and we're going to put this T on, and we're going to put this line back on. So once you get the line back on, you can put your quick connect back on there and it'll lock in. Now this line here that we're coming off the T with is actually going to feed the new hard line that we just installed. So because of how I have this position, I'm going to remove this. We'll pull that cap that we left on the hard line off, and then we'll take this piece and just snap it on. Just snap that on there, and we'll take this one and snap it on here, and then that's it. We're good to go. So now your quick connects are all attached, and what we're essentially doing with the way that this is set up, what you're essentially doing is you're taking your fuel that's been filtered and you're dividing it up. So now you have the factory fuel supply that's running to the factory line that is just now lubricating the crankcase of the pump. Now we have a T in that, and we're also supplying fresh filtered fuel to just the M-prop valve by itself, which is then distributed to the heads of the pump. All right, now that we got the fuel feed connected, we can move on to the exo filter or the return filter setup, which we've already pre-assembled. So we can go ahead and remove the connector. Now, this is the return line that feeds back to the tank. All of these are located in relatively the same spot, but on different model years, you'll notice it'll either have a 90-degree connector or a 45-degree. This one's a 45. And the stem will move positions on this return line, on the hard line. So just pay attention to that. There may be some different locations for certain trucks. So we'll go ahead and move that off to the side there. The return filter assembly, or the exo filter as we call it, we already assembled on the bench. You can put the electrical connection on prior to putting it in. So you can either leave it off or put it on, pre-assemble it. We're going to, on this model year truck, there is a Christmas tree connection for the number 6 injector. We're going to want to pop that out, and then we'll have to move this line to the side because the bracket to hold this down is actually going to use that location. On the earlier trucks, they were not set up that way. There was actually another metal bracket there similar to this one. There was actually two. So they quit using that. So what we'll do is we'll reach down in there with a Christmas tree tool or a door panel pin popper, flathead screwdriver can also work. Just be careful not to hurt the injector wire. The other thing you can do too is pull up on the tab for the actual injector connection and actually just pop the electrical connector off of the injector to just kind of give you some more access. Kind of work that out of there. Should come out relatively easy. We'll just leave that off to the side for now. There we go. Move it out. Actually, we'll go ahead and hook that back up. You don't want to forget to reconnect the injector. So I'll plug that back in. Make sure you push down. There's a lock tab right there. That locks. And then you can kind of just push the wires over a little bit. Make sure they're down and kind of out of the way. And that'll leave you access to the actual mounting flat that we're going to use for the bracket to hold this on. So we'll go ahead and sit this down in here. So the return line is going to sit like this. It's going to face the driver's side fender. That'll slide right over it like that. And then we can route the wires so we don't forget to do this. We'll route them this way. And then this is your fuel pressure sensor that we're going to utilize. And we're going to actually jump between this connection. So we'll come in here, put our connector on, lock that, take the other end of the connector to the harness end, push that on, lock it, and you're done. So you can tuck this down and out of the way, route that accordingly. And then what we'll do now is we're going to go ahead and put this bracket on. You're going to notice it's going to be kind of hard to show because there isn't much room down here. But that Christmas tree area, I don't know if we can see that. Let me actually just slide this up. Move this off to the side for a second. All right, guys, I removed these fuel lines real quick just so we can give you a better view and kind of show you the injector line routing, the hose, the actual wiring routing, and the hose as far as the return itself, how everything kind of looks down here. So I sat the bracket on here to show you the adjustability in it, how you can slide it backward and forward. You're going to want it back. Keep it pushed back like that for now. Then you're going to take your actual exo filter housing and you're going to slide it over the stud like that. And then on the other side, you're going to push that bracket forward like that till it touches the actual exo filter housing, and it'll be flush. And on the back side, you'll remember, I'll pull this off and show you, there's these little holes right here.
One second. Okay.
These holes are what that bracket's going to bolt to the exo filter housing by. So once you put this on here,
okay,
once you get it on, you're going to notice that whenever you push that bracket up against the back of this and actually square it up, it's only going to line up with one of those holes. So once you get that hole lined up, you're going to take the smaller of the M6 5mm drive bolt. You're going to take that last one that you have and you're going to put that in that hole and then snug everything down. There we go. All right, guys, now that the brackets are all tight, snug down, you're going to basically, it's still going to move a little bit, but obviously you're not going to be able to pick up on it, and that's the main thing. There are O-rings in there, so it will be able to move a little. All you have to do now for the return line is take it, and you're going to push it right back down on the fitting on the exo filter. So go like that, and then you're going to lock down the factory lock the way it's supposed to be. And then I'm going to go ahead and put these lines back on because I popped them off so that we could get a better view here. We'll put these back on one more time. Check all your connections by, you're going to want to pull on them, make sure that everything's snapped and locked in because you don't want a fuel leak. And then normally at this point, I'd recommend going and kind of either taking a rag and wiping everything off so you don't have fuel residue on it, because dust loves to stick to it, and just kind of clean everything up. But at this point, the disaster prevention kit's completely on the truck and you're good to go. All right guys, now that we got the install video done on the 2023 test truck, we got our Gen 2 kit installed. We wanted to kind of make this just a quick install video for you. We didn't want to really drag it out. We wanted to kind of cover the key points in it. One of the key things that we want to go over with before we end today is make sure everything's clean. We gotta keep it clean. If you're pulling a common rail system open for anything, whether it's injector, pumps, a disaster prevention kit, whatever it may be, cleanliness is key. That should be your #1 thing when you're working on this stuff. So you want to drive that home. As far as torque specs and things of that nature, go on the website. We will still have the instructions and everything available online, obviously. So make sure when you're doing this kit, if you do reference the video, make sure you have the instructions too. And make sure you're following that pretty detailed. If you have questions along the way or before you purchase the kit or whatever you may need, give us a call. Let us know what your questions are. We'll help you the best that we can. We have a product spotlight video that kind of goes over the whole development process of the kit and how the CP4 fuel system kind of works in general. So thank you guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one.